Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Empower Ed YouTube channel. I am Francis Jim Toscano, and we are on our second Edu lectures. It's a Saturday afternoon, and I'm very happy to welcome everyone. I've been offline and trying to scroll through the chat that we have right now, and I'm so happy to see everyone in the chat room of the YouTube live streaming. I just want to give a shout out to Dr. Lidi, Dr. Lidi of the Education Attaché of the Indonesian Embassy in Manila, and it's very exciting. I just want to give a shout out to Dr. Lidi. I was with Dr. Lidi around how many days ago, or maybe 2 days ago, and we had the same topic. It was a short discussion. It was a short discussion Indonesian teachers and Filipino teachers, and we talk about assessment. So, Dr. Lily, a lot of the ideas here will be new to you. Will be almost the same thing that you've heard from me 2 days ago, but what is very interesting right now is I will try to make the lecture, quote and unquote, um, shorter, because I want to interact. I want to answer the questions of our teachers right now. I think that's what I want to do. While Empower Ed Edu lecture is about sharing ideas from my side, I also want to interact with everyone. So this is very funny. This is very funny. I just want to read it from Dan Anadelia. Dan Anadelia says, "Good afternoon to all and Sir Jim, eksakto gising ko." Wow, that's a great one. Thank you for waking up and setting the alarm. Maybe you set your alarm. So there, I'm so happy with everyone. I'm really overwhelmed because around 5,000 registered. A week ago we had around 3,000. I think that was around 3,000. And this session we have around 5,000 registration. And some of you told me that you might not be able to watch me because you have a session, or maybe you have a work right now, but it's okay. This will be uploaded immediately on YouTube, so you can just watch it anytime you want. That is what I want to do. It's You can watch the lecture on demand. That is what we say right now, on demand. You can access it. So thank you. Shout out to everyone who's there. So get ready, bring your notes out, write your questions later because I want to really interact with you. I'm pretty sure you've heard about assessment and a lot of the webinars that you have already attended, but I want to take this time to clarify some big ideas. At the same time, entertain questions that you have. So don't be shy. We're gonna make the lecture short, hopefully the lecture shorter, so that we can interact with your and answer some of your questions. So thank you so much. I just heard thunder. I just heard thunder right now, and I hope it doesn't rain much because if it rains really strong, if you have a thunderstorm, the internet gets affected. So there. Let me share my screen right now. All right. So I hope you can see my screen. I have started sharing my screen. So welcome to our episode 2. It's assessment in the different modalities of distance education. Um, I want to start with the idea that we're not discussing assessment in distance education just because we're doing distance education. Why am I always beginning with this thought? Because a lot of the questions really that we ask lecturers or webinars, sometimes the questions are not anchored on what's happening right now. It's important that we understand the context right now because doing assessment in distance education in the old normal, it's very different in some ways, in some areas, when you do assessment in emergency remote learning. Our context is that there's an emergency public health. So the expectation from students, the expectation from teachers might not be the same when we're doing distance education in the old normal, because distance education has been here. Distance education has been with us even before there was a pandemic. University of the Philippines Open Education, that's a distance education school. They do online distance learning. However, even at this time of the pandemic, even those schools offering distance education in the old normal started to rethink what kind of assessment would be very, very possible for distance education, for distance learning in a state of public health emergency. So let us remember, because what if you have students who live in areas that are heavily affected by the pandemic? It may be hard for them to do assessment. It may be hard for them to create some projects that you've been asking them to do. So, is there a call for flexibility? Yes. Is there a call for skills of adaptability? Yes. So let's discuss that further. Oh my goodness, that's just the thunder coming out coming out right now. So yeah, very interesting topic that we have today. Let us understand first, why are we doing assessment at this time of the pandemic? The importance of assessment at this time of the pandemic. It is always very important to know why we're doing assessment. Why are there so much tests, even in the old normal that we have? Why are we taking a lot of tests, giving a lot of tests for our students? Well, because in education, assessment plays a very important role. When we have assessment, we gather data, and those data actually gives us insights. They actually tell us where our students are already. Are they getting it? Are they getting the lesson? It's a way for us to deeply understand. Are they learning? Are they learning, or do they understand? Do they understand our lesson? So it's very important that we understand that in assessment, we want to evaluate because we want to know how much the students have understood, how much they know, or what they can do. Knowledge, skills, and attitudes. However, we also want to give feedback to the learners. And in distance education, or even in the normal education, when you're teaching younger students, the feedback is very important for parents also, because they will have to help in giving feedback and improving, or helping their kids improve the way they learn. So even in the assessment, it's not just between teacher and student. There is another party there who is very important. We call them as stakeholders. The parents are stakeholders. Some schools call them as partners in education. So we need to make sure that assessments feedback are very, very clear. And then in the end, as teachers, it all goes back also to us. Data, insight, right? The assessment, the mistakes that students commit, the misconceptions that they have. In a way, or not in the way, those are data. Those are insights that will inform us decisions or action that we need to do. This is like a basic assessment, assessment 101, assessment in education. Those are data so that we would know what would happen in our lesson. Will we reteach the lesson? Will we adjust our strategies? Will we need to focus on one student or maybe a group of students? Do we need to emphasize this part of the lesson because it's the part that they don't understand well? So it pretty much calls us to be accountable for our work as teachers. Because if you know that your students are failing and you're not doing anything about it, you're not even adjusting your lesson, then that's not a good way. You need to understand that as an educator, that is your responsibility. That is part of your responsibility, because no one will ever tell the student that they need to improve on something. Assessment is not just an evaluation. It's not just you checking, check grade. This is your grade. No, assessment is gathering insight, gathering feedback. It's not even about numbers. Of course, you have item analysis. It will give you a bigger picture. But then in the end, we want to understand how assessment would further help students. Now, let us situate this again. I've co-written a report. You can download this for free. It's entitled "Thinking About Pedagogy in an Unfolding Pandemic." And I've co-wrote this with some international teachers who have been very, very close to me, and we talk about what's happening in education right now. How are schools coping with the pandemic? The chapter that was assigned to me was about assessment. I'm not an expert in assessment per se, but what I did, of course, I have my own background knowledge and expertise on that, especially with the use of technology and assessment. But then what I wanted to do was, let's gather data from students. Let's gather data from teachers at this time of the pandemic. And these are the information that I've gotten from teachers. The big thoughts coming from them. Number one, assessments or quizzes designed for face-to-face classes became unreliable in online platform. Why? It's just basically when the students are at home, whether you're doing online learning, printed modality for distance education, the reliability of assessment is being questioned, right? How are we sure that they're the one answering the test? How are we sure that they're the one creating the project? How are we sure that when they answer the test, their parents are not intervening, right? Or maybe their adult supervisor, or maybe their, I don't know, siblings, older siblings, things like that. We have those questions happening behind us, and don't worry, it's not only you who is trying to think about this question, those challenges. Everyone is, all teachers, right? And then of course the question is, if in school, in face to face, you can give feedback to students, what's going to happen then in distance education? In online distance learning, it's easy to give feedback, but in other modalities, like in printed modules, where is now feedback there? If it's a self-independent learning, if it's self-dependent learning, how are you going then to help the students in their learning? How are you going to give feedback to them? And then, of course, another issue that came out, this came from teachers: inequitable access plays a major role in the area of assessment, especially those done online. So, for example, you're doing some modalities. How are you sure that the assessments that is being answered by the students is the same with the other with our students? What if they don't have good access to internet connection? They're doing online tests, and then suddenly internet connection it's lost, right? What happens to your test, right? What happened if students do not have the basic requirements if you're gonna do online, or even if you're gonna do offline, or even if you're gonna do printed module? How are you going to make sure that the students are creating the best project, the best way to answer your assessment? Things like that. Authenticity in summative assessment. How are you sure that your summative assessment are authentic enough? Authentic assessment means that students are able to apply their learned knowledge and skills to real life problems. In distance education, you can still do that, but you need to design your summative assessment well so that they become authentic. All right. So that's one question. Those are the other things. And then one thing that has been very, very, common answer to a lot of teachers right now. The cancellation of high stakes exam, and dropping of other assessments. In the United States, for example, and even in other countries, they have achievement tests, they have national tests. But because of the pandemic, it's really hard to test students right now. It doesn't make sense. A lot of students are scared. A lot of students have missed classes. So they remove high stake exams and they drop other assessments. Okay? So those are the things that are happening right now. So what did the teachers tell me when I was talking to them and I asked, so what do you think about assessment? What do you think should happen with assessments? These were the ideas that came out from their reflection, and I tried to organize them and I put forward these recommendations in the report that I have written. Number one, we ask ourselves at this time of the pandemic, what is the purpose of assessment? What is the purpose of assessment right now? Is it just to grade students, to find out who's doing well, who's gonna be an honor student, who got perfect score? It's just to evaluate learning, or because evaluation is still very, very important, or can we see assessment are tools for learning that will continue to encourage students, support them, engage them so that they don't stop studying at this time of the pandemic? A lot of debates are coming in right now. Some have even proposed academic freeze, which means that there will be no education until the pandemic stops. Can you imagine a society where education stops? Maybe face-to-face learning will have to stop. It has stopped. But will education stop? I don't think I can imagine. Personally, I cannot imagine a society. I cannot imagine a society without education. Education must continue. But we have to push ourselves, and it's not because we're not pushing ourselves. I posted a while ago in my Facebook page yesterday, by the way, and I'm very happy, and I have a high respect for educators like us. We are going beyond our duty right now as educators. We are going beyond our duty to teach, because we're trying a lot of things. We're learning, we're relearning. That's why Edu Lectures, our tagline is to learn or unlearn, learn, and relearn, because that's what is happening right now. Equitable assessments across modalities. Is it possible that when we do blended learning means a mix of modality, how can we sure that the assessment for those who are doing USB based assessment or digital but offline, how are you sure that their assessment will be equitable, will be just, will be fair, will be the same with those using printed, right? It's not good that we look at online and say, those assessments are better because those are online. Those in the printed assessments just so. We don't need to make them better. That's not good. That's actually promoting inequality. It's not fair. It's not just. So whatever modality that we're using, equitable assessment means that the assessment should be fair and just. We should be looking at the content, not on how beautiful it is. That's I think the challenge for a lot of teachers. Um, I've met some teachers personally who grade their students based on the design, based on the beautiful cover of their project, based on I don't know, right? But right now, at this time of the pandemic, we need to rethink the way we do assessment, and of course, remind ourselves that it is important that we look at content, not the design, not the arte as we call it, not the arte. It's really just focusing on the essential. So if you have multiple kinds of modalities that are happening in your district, in your division, maybe it's important to take note that the assessment that we give, especially when there is a combination of modality in our school, should be the same, should be fair, should be just. Okay, so I just wanna give something. Focus now on assessment. This will just be a short discussion. This is a review because in the Department of Education there is DO8. I think it's DO number 8. When we talk about assessment, the use of formative and summative assessment. You can check me. You can check me on the chat if the department order is wrong. But I know that this is an order and it's been before. And even before the order, I know some schools have been doing formative and summative assessment. My school, for example, in Xavier School, we've been doing that for so many years, right? We've transitioned from traditional assessment long ago. I still remember that because in my first year we were doing traditional assessment, but when we went to my second year in school in Xavier School, we have transitioned to non-traditional assessment. So what are we going to do here? In distance education, we still bring in the idea of formative feedback, formative assessment, and summative assessment. But we're now calling it designing for feedback, designing for authenticity. Regardless of the modality, it is important that we design for feedback and we design for authentic assessment. So what does that mean? Feedback. Why is feedback very, very important? I want you to think about the modality that you're using right now or planning. For those who are using printed distance education, ask yourself, how are we going to give feedback to our students at this time of the pandemic when they are using print-based modules? Where will feedback come from when they cannot meet the teacher virtually or in the text, right? Because it's printed. If you're doing TV and broadcast, remember TV and broadcast, that's one way. You don't talk to the people who you are listening to in TV. Even in radio, the speaker, the lecturer will not hear you. So in one way or another, how are you going to ensure that there is formative feedback, that is feedback to students? In online distance learning, it's very, very easy. It's very easy because we can bring, we can do video conferencing online. That's one thing that you could do. However, in modalities that is where two-way communication is not possible, what can we do? Right? Let's talk about that later. But can I just point out that feedback is very, very important. Whatever modality, whether face-to-face, distance education, blended, or whatever, okay, feedback is very, very important. You know why? Because feedback actually helps the student to know if they're getting the lesson, if the answer that they have given is correct, or if they're really getting the lesson or not. In distance education, okay, there are a lot of people, of students who fail. There's a high mortality rate. There's a high mortality rate in distance education. You know why? It's because teachers do not give feedback. When teachers do not give feedback to students, they don't know if the lesson, if the thing that they're understanding is correct. If no one corrects them, they might be learning the misconception, and that misconception goes and no one's correct them. So it's very important that you think, how are we going to give feedback? Um, so designing for feedback, this is one thing that I need you to consider. To design for feedback means to look at the developmental appropriateness and readiness of students. What does that mean? If you have older students, say for example in senior high school, they're now capable of self-reflection. They can now do independent learning, and you can train them to spot if they have committed a mistake, if they're not sure about what they're learning. What is very challenging right now is, what if you're teaching younger students? If you're teaching younger students, then you need to involve parents, older siblings, or guardians or home supervisors. Home supervisors. And then some people would say, teacher, what if the parents have work? Are you expecting that in distance education, when they're learning at home, there is still a schedule? One thing that you could look into is, why not let the students follow a flexible schedule at home? They're not in school. You will not, if you're doing print-based modular, like independent learning, print-based modules. Are you gonna suggest that there's a schedule, like a schedule in class, the same at home, or are you giving the students and the parents the time when they're going to study the lesson, the module? Are you still expecting that, for example, English, MWF, or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 8:30 to 9:30? Are you still expecting to give that? Or if you're giving that as a guide for students who can do independent learning, I'm pretty sure that you need to involve the parents so that they can choose when they want to study with their kids at home. That is flexibility. Flexibility in learning. In distance education, actually in distance education, if you're doing asynchronous activity, which means that students can choose when they study, as long as they finish the module, as long as they do the assessment, as long as they answer the worksheets. It's pretty much depends on them. Okay. Another thing, what kind of assess feedback do you want to put? Grant Wiggins, if some of you have learned about understanding by design, UBD, it's called the backward design. Grant Wiggins was one of the proponent there. It's McTighe and Wiggins. And Wiggins reminds us that when we give feedback, we need to make sure that we give feedback that are tangible, transparent, actionable, user friendly, timely, ongoing, and consistent. Can I give you an example? This is what I don't like. There are teachers who would check assessments, practice tests, and what is their comment? Wrong, X, and circle. Then they don't put anything. If I'm the student, what will I do with the X's and the circle? You need to tell the students, for example, if you underline it, you write there, explain further your thought about this. Some teachers and circle it, and then they write explain. Explain what? Explain further. Some students will not get. Remember, what does feedback mean? It's actionable. Actionable. It's user friendly. It's timely. It's consistent. If you want to give feedback, for example, underline it, and then you say, this line is not clear. You need to give, you need to further explain why you think this is wrong or whatever. Some teachers, of course, I do understand we have a lot of students, but if you want to really help your students, you give feedback that are very specific. Tell them why they are wrong or tell them what they need to do, right? Don't just encircle, 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 right? I don't know. A lot of us use red. I don't care if my paper as a student is full of red lines. As long as you put there what I need to improve on, you need to help me realize that. And writing a lot of circles, drawing a lot of circles, does not make any sense at all, right? Another thing, timeliness. Timeliness. When will you give feedback? Timeliness is very, very important. I hope that you don't give feedback to students before the test. No more na. It doesn't make sense anymore. You need to make sure that when you give feedback, there's a time for the students to improve, right? To improve about your, about their lesson, about their understanding. So timeliness is very, very important. Timeliness also means teachers, you need to make sure that there's a consistent feedback. There's a consistent feedback so that students can check what they're learning. If if they have misconception, they need to correct that. And they will only know that if there is a feedback coming from the teacher. Another thing, so I'm just gonna put this up here. These are sample formative assessment tools, and then the web-based tools or apps that you can use. I'm pretty sure you've attended a lot of how to use Google Forms, Kahoot, Quizlet, Edpuzzle, all those kinds of things. So I'm just gonna put this up there, give you time to do some screenshot, especially when you want to explore the web-based tools or apps. Those are my recommendation or suggestion. But I just want to give you, if you're doing online distance learning, these are the things that you can do as sample formative assessment. Number one, online quizzes with automated feedback. So if you want to use Quizlet, Google Form, you can devise a way. You can check the setting and then make sure that the app gives feedback when students answer the items incorrectly. You can have guided learning through videos and other interactive video. What is my suggestion here? If you want your students to watch a video and then answer some questions to check if they're really listening or watching to the video, use Edpuzzle or look at Khan Academy. Those are very, very good tools, right? Another thing, is it possible for students to record your explanation so that you can give feedback to them? Yes, that's possible. You can also use portfolio. Progress or process portfolio means that you let your students track their progress by asking them to compile the learning artifacts. Learning artifacts are products. They could be quizzes, essays that they have written, whether practice tests or enrichment activities, so that they can track their progress. You just need to teach the students to realize that they need to reflect on their learning. One important skill that we need to teach our students when they look at formative assessments and our feedback is that they should be able to reflect. They should be able to reflect on the practice test, and on what they need to improve on. We need to teach that to our students. It's not that easy. It's like learning from your mistake in real life. You only learn from your mistakes if you realize that you committed a mistake, right? In real life, that's how you become a better person. The idea of formative assessment is that we give feedback to students and then we train the students to learn how to improve themselves by reflecting on what they can improve on. All right? These are other examples. Discussion threads or discussion boards. If you use Flipgrid or Padlet, those are my recommended apps. In Flipgrid, students can record their video, and then other people about a certain topic, for example, or a certain question, and then their classmates can give feedback to each other. This is online. This is online distance learning, right? You can also have feedback poll, like Mentimeter, poll everywhere, Survey Monkey. You gather feedback from your student, or even Google Forms. And then, of course, very important, you can always share your checklist or rubrics. Rubrics are very, very important because they tell the students what level they are now. If they have already practiced the skills that we are asking them to do, or to understand. Sorry for that. Okay. Now let's have a question. Mr. Toscano, Sir Jim, how about the other modalities? I'm pretty sure some of your questions saying, oh, those are online distance learning modalities. How about the other modalities? How about the other modalities? Well, let's take a look. If you're using print-based and TV radio broadcast, I always suggest that you still have printed worksheets, enrichment activities, practice quizzes. You put them together with the module. Oh, by the way, I just want to plug in. My next session is about strategies and approaches that you can insert in your modules, embed in your distance learning modules so that you can have more formative feedback. So wait, it's the same time next week. We will look at strategies and approaches so that we can better engage students, especially in printed modules. So in printed worksheets, enrichment activities, practice quizzes, you can always do this. Even for digital offline tech tools, if you have digital worksheets or enrichment activities, you can always do that. Practice quizzes, whether it's PDF or ebook. The question here is, how do you insert feedback, right? How do you make sure that the students are actually going to receive feedback? One thing that we could do is to give students or parents copies of rubrics for reflective self-assessment. What does that mean? In the modules that you have, you give them a set of rubrics, you train them, you train the parents how to use their rubrics so that they can assess themselves or help their children know if they're understanding the lesson or not. Okay, so that's very, very important. For other modalities, this is your ways of feedback. How about if you can give your number, your cell phone number to parents or to your students so that they can call you if they have questions, or you can call them to give feedback and say, I receive your worksheets, and these are the mistakes that I have recognized that you have committed. This is my feedback. So there are so many ways of doing that. Using the radio or TV to explain. This is the thing right now. I've seen a lot of you recording radio or TV, but all of those things are delivering instruction, are delivering content. Is there any way where we can look at the radio at the same time make it a show, like for example, correcting misconceptions, right? A lot of us right now are doing a lot of content creation. But let us not forget, even if we create content, if the students do not understand the content, then it doesn't make sense. The learning that they have will just be pure misconception. So we need to find a way to provide feedback, right? Oh, by the way, can I just share? I talked to a teacher from Cebu. I think it's Cebu, from Region 8. And in some of the provinces that they have, it's really be difficult for them to give feedback, especially when they have what you call that, families that may not have access to technology such as a cell phone. So what they did was, there's another option where the teacher will have to do well teacher has to do this safely, will have to identify students who are struggling, and they will visit them at home to give feedback. It could be once a week, once every 2 weeks, or twice a month, just to make sure that they talk to the student. I love that mindset, I love that idea. Okay, of course that means that we need to follow social distance. Social distancing, we follow precautionary health measures, but that's one way of doing it. But we need to make sure that we're safe also, huh?
because the pandemic is just around us. We have an invisible virus enemy. So feedback, how will you be able to give feedback to your students? For the offline digital tools, there's automated response systems. You can still give feedback. You can still give feedback to students through using offline methods. For example, I read one comment here. Annotating PDF. Yes, annotating PDF is okay, especially when you're doing online distance learning. But even annotating PDF for digital offline, there should be a way. How will teacher annotate and give feedback? Right? The question really here is, how are they going to submit to you? So think about it. Is there any like a delivery system? I do remember I have a friend, a principal in New York, Dr. Nadia Lopez. She's a very good friend of mine. She teaches, her school is in Brooklyn, and they devised a way. There's a pickup system. For example, Friday afternoon, parents will go to the school. It's a designated safe pickup point, safe pickup point, and parents will come and get their module for the next week. But the parents have to submit the worksheets, the assessment that their kids have answered on that end of the week, right? So there's a pickup system. That's why in distance education, it's called correspondence distance education. Print-based are called correspondence distance education. Now, think about it. For those saying digital offline tech tools, how would the students give you their PDF, right? How will students give you their assessments, their worksheets? You need to find a way. You need to find a way. Is there a correspondence of USB materials? Things like that. There's another question here. How about in kinder? How could we assess them? You can still assess kinder. You can give worksheets to them. The question really is, our mentality of assessment right now is kailangan, it's always needed to submit to teacher. And teacher is always there to check on them. No. In distance education, you have to trust your students. You have to partner with your parents because they're the one who would be able to help you. The question is, I think let's talk about this further, and I don't know if you would agree with me. I think we are talking about honesty. How are we sure that they're not cheating? How are we sure that it's not their parents who are answering? Right? Those are the things that you need to understand. Even if you give rubrics, in the end, they will have to do it for themselves. So let's talk about it later because it goes beyond assessment. The discussion for honesty, integrity, assessments, cheating, it goes beyond assessment. There is a fundamental thing that we need to talk about in the education system in the Philippines. Right? In the education system in the Philippines. Even if you're doing online distance learning, how are you sure that they're not screenshotting their web pages and sending them to others? Right now, you're not okay. I'll give you a secret. Right now, you don't know that I'm using my cell phone, right? Because you cannot see my cell phone. So even if you're doing online distance learning and you're giving them online quizzes, how are you sure that they're not searching for the answers in Google? Things like that. It goes beyond. It goes beyond assessment now, and I want to talk about that further later on. Let's just finish this because in one way or another we still have to give assessments. All right. Authentic design of assessment. Oh, Sir Jim, how about summative assessment? Yes, you are still going to deliver to give summative assessment. Your summative assessment could be in the form of long tests or quizzes, projects, performance-based. But in distance education, the best assessments are actually performance-based assessments. Performance-based assessments are much better because they allow students to apply learned skills and essential understanding in complex problems. Right? Because in life, the best assessment for professional is not about answering tests, right? It's not answering tests. It's solving problem. As a teacher, your challenges in life is to solve problems. As an engineer, your work is not about, oh, I'm an engineer, I will answer a lot of tests. No, you're an engineer, you need to fix this. right? Our education system should focus more on performance-based assessment. And in distance education, this is the thing that we need to understand. This is the thing that we need to understand, right? Performance-based assessments are much better. Of course, we need to understand the older the students, the more performance-based assessment we give. For example, in college, you need to trust your students, right? In college, you need to trust your students. They are mature. They can do whatever things that you ask them to do. So there is more performance-based assessment on them. Senior high. But can you imagine, how about if you say, Mr. Toscano, about the kinder? Will they do performance-based assessment? Again, you look at your learning outcomes. Because if your learning outcomes in kinder is to identify colors, then you give them performance-based assessment that will let them identify color, right? That they can identify color, right? So things like that. Project-based learning. Project-based learning is one way of doing authentic assessment. But the big question is, what makes an assessment authentic? An assessment that is authentic is really based on the design of the assessment. An authentic assessment lets the students solve a complex problem. I'll give you an example, and I will wait for your reply. I will wait for your reply. You tell me a diorama. For example, my social studies teacher asked the students their project is to make a diorama of the Battle of Mactan, because their lesson is about the Battle of Mactan. Okay, the learning competencies there is to make sure that they know what's happening. They know cause and effect. I don't know. Maybe they know that. Maybe one of the learning competencies is to understand the present and to plan for the future. They need to understand what happened in the past. So the performance assessment is actually to create a diorama of the Battle of Mactan using cardboard maybe. Actually, teacher's so good. He says you can make cardboard, you can create a video, you can create a paper mache. What else? You can create a poster about the Battle of Mactan. You need to tell me what happened in the Battle of Mactan. Now, is that authentic assessment or not? In terms of authenticity, okay, on terms of authenticity, I'll give you 30 seconds. Can you answer me in the live chat? Is that an authentic assessment? Okay. Oh, our live chat has stopped. A lot of you were posting. A lot of you were posting your thoughts. Tapos when I posted the question, a lot of you has stopped already. Oh, Miss De Chavez, Neil says yes. What else? Gail said no. Okay, so keep your answers coming in. So a diorama. Okay, diorama. It's a yes. It's a yes. It's a no. It's a no. It's more of creativity assessment. It's a no. Remember, the subject is Araling Panlipunan. Okay, no, because it does not target the performance outcome. Yes, no. Okay, what's our answer right now? Our answer is that diorama, given the learning outcomes, given the subject, is not an authentic assessment. Why? It's not an authentic assessment because there was no problem. What was the problem being solved by students? There was no problem at all. Teacher just says, make a diagram of what happened in the Battle of Mactan. That's it. If I'm a very, very street smart student, what will I do? I will download picture. I will look at YouTube videos. I will make paper mache. I'm very good in arts. I'm very creative student. But the teacher did not really give us a problem, so I will just make it. There's no added value. There's no problem at all there. When we say problem, it means it's real life problem. So that diorama is not an authentic assessment. There's no application of knowledge and skills. Yes? Because it's basically just recalling. They will just parrot. Think of this. If the assessment includes a lot of parroting, then it's not an authentic assessment. There's no higher order level thinking skill. So this is my favorite example. This is my favorite example. I do remember a discussion with my mother. My mother's favorite project before was, I remember discussion, she teaches sinaunang sibilisasyon, mga ambag. For our foreigner speakers, non-Filipino speakers, it's called Ancient Civilization. It's a history class, and they have to look at the contributions of ancient civilization. And I remember this. There are a lot of Araling Panlipunan social studies teachers who would ask their students to create a compilation. Picture here, contribution in food. For example, Chinese, ayan, pancit. What else? In words, achi, or dances, or games, things like that. That's not an authentic assessment. That's not an authentic assessment. That's a compilation. That's a compilation, and they will just parrot from everything. There's no application there. But a lot of teachers are still doing that. So what I remember having a conversation with my mother. My mother's also watching right now. And I told her, why not have a different kind of assessment? My mother teaches in Abra. She teaches a group of indigenous people. It calls it. We are called, because I'm part of that also. I'm not wholly part of it. I'm Ilocano, but we have some blood relations. The Tinggen or the Itneg, right? So I told my mom, why not let your students go out into and talk to the elders and talk to the local community, and they uncover what are the contributions of the local indigenous people to the bigger society in the town that we have right now. The problem could be the problem could be as simple as, you have to make sure that they uncover what are the major contribution of the indigenous people to the bigger society of Abra, right? That could be an example. Of course, you can further unpack that and design well, but the main challenge there is they will not parrot, and they will have to interview the elders of the community, right? So that's one important. That's as an example. It's not a perfect example, but I'm pretty sure you get it. I've read a comment here. How about for grade 1 students? Right? They are still building their knowledge and skills. Don't worry, because in the lower grades, I suggest that you have lower order thinking skill. Why? Because they are building knowledge, basic knowledge and skill. You cannot expect them to solve complex problems if you have not developed the basic knowledge and skills that they have to master. Remember, in the lower grades, mastery of basic knowledge and skills so that you have a solid foundation. That's what we mean when we say that we need to understand the developmental appropriateness even of assessment. An authentic assessment of a kinder it will be different with a senior high school student. In senior high school student, they will be talking about global problems. But for a kinder student, the authentic problem would be, maybe how do I identify colors, right? I want to paint a picture, right? But I want to use this color because my lesson is primary colors. You could always, in the lower grades. So don't be afraid. For kinder grade 1, build basic knowledge and skills first. So don't worry about higher order thinking skills in the lower grades. You can still put higher order thinking skills because you need to train them, but you don't flood them. I don't think it will be good also. You need to build mastery of basic knowledge and skills in students. So that should be clear. In online distance learning, these are some examples. These are examples of authentic assessment. Again, forms. These are just forms, okay? These are forms of authentic assessment. What will make them authentic is the design. These are just sample forms of authentic assessment, all right? Let's understand that. Synthesis papers, research papers, collaborative inquiry projects, learning goals, showcase or project portfolios. In distance education, portfolios are very, very good. And then, there's a question again. Mr. Toscano, what if they plagiarize? What if they cheat? What if they let other students, other people write their synthesis papers? In plagiarism, you have Turnitin. It's an online application where you can detect which of this were copied or whatever plagiarized. And then the question: what if other people wrote it for them? Number one, how are you sure that some people wrote it for them, right? Or are you just assuming and you're just scaring yourself? Are you thinking of a problem that you're not sure of? I do understand that you want to make the assessments right now in distance education cheat proof or fool proof. You want it that this assessment should be locked down and no one should be cheating about it. But come on, it's distance education. You're not there. You're not there to see everything. So that's why it's very important. What if people are writing for it? Again, trust your students. But make sure that if there are cases of plagiarism, make sure that your school has a protocol, because that's academic dishonesty, right? That's academic dishonesty. If you found out that someone did this or that and they came out clean, how do you do that in terms of behavior management, right? What is your protocol? Okay. Sample authentic assessment, of course, you can do this. This is online digital platform. And then some people will say, what if we are having different modalities? If we have different modalities, print based, you can still do print quizzes. You can still do print long tests, projects. You can still ask them to create their projects. If you're digital offline, your PDFs could always be there, your interactive quizzes and long tests. It's just there. It's just there, right? It doesn't really make a difference right now, because when you do authentic assessment or summative assessment, you're giving the ball to the students, right? The ball is in their court, right? The question now is, how are we sure that there is no parent or other person's intervention? How will students submit their work? I think this is very, very important. I don't know if you've thought about this, but they need to know, we need to have a protocol how students will give the quizzes, will give back the quizzes or the long tests, right? How do we grade students' work? In terms of honesty, there's one thing that I can share to you. In my school, for example, and I know that there are other schools who are doing this. In the quizzes and the long tests, of course, they put it in the sealed envelope or envelope or whatever. But at the end of the test, there is an honesty pledge. There's an honesty pledge that says, I answered this test. My parents or no other people help me. And then there's a signature the student will sign, parents will sign. So while the ball is in the court of the students right now, we're also telling the parents, we're also telling the home environment, the parents, and we're telling them you need to be a model of honesty and integrity for your son, right? So that's one way of looking into this. There's not. It's okay. I think this is what we need to understand. It's okay that our assessments right now are not cheat proof. If you want to do cheat proof, I don't know how you will do it with the different modalities, because you cannot ask your students to go to school and answer the test, because the pandemic is there. There are school closures that are happening, right? Honesty pledge. It could be a simple one. You're just telling the parents, hey, you need to be a model of honesty and integrity, right? You need to be a model of honesty and integrity. Now, one of the reasons why, I don't know, maybe ask yourself. Let's try to interact again. I want you to write in the notes right now. I want you to try it in the live chat. What do you think is forcing parents to intervene? Or what do you think are forcing students or pushing students to cheat in tests? Right? So I'm just gonna stop for now. I'm just gonna stop for now. And I wanna wait in the live chat right now. Just do a short reflection. What is pushing our students to cheat or to become dishonest? Or what is pushing parents to intervene in assessments? right? So I'm gonna wait for now. I'm just gonna, drink my coffee. I'm just gonna drink my coffee and wait for your live chat. So that's a good reflection. Oh, Abigail says pressure to get higher grades. Who's pressuring them? That's a good question. Heidi, expectation from parents to get higher grades. Pride, wanting to good grades to get honor. They want to good grades. Pressure to get high grades to please their parents. Pressure from parents. This answer came from a senior high school student. Yes, yes, it's that's very valid. It's very honest. Wanting the child to be an achiever. Students want to have high grades because our education system is so used to equating achievement with rewards. Very good. I love that answer. Let's talk about that further. Parents very high expectation. This is very interesting. Look. The pressure is coming from outside. It's an external pressure. It's not even from them. Some are commitment to excellence. Very good. That's an internal motivation. But if you look at the answer, a lot of those things are actually coming from parents. And it's because it's not just higher grade. They want to have higher grade because they want to have honors. Right? The question is, thank you. I love your thoughts. I really appreciate your thoughts. The question right now is, what about in distance education? If the students are going to answer this on their own at home with adult supervisor or their parents, and we know that parents, it's not the kids who want the high grades, it's the students. If the kids want to get the higher grades, it's for themselves, it's internally motivated, that's very good. But some of you just mentioned that, it's for their parents. There's a high expectation, right? In order to pass. But the question is, can we still grade students without numbers? Is it possible to just have a grading system that is pass or fail? Is it possible at this time of the pandemic that we focus on achievement of standards, achievement of learning outcomes more than the numbers, the number games? Grades are always a number games. I don't know if you have if you have experience. There's always haggling. Nakikiusap na lang. Teacher, it's only 0.5. Can you accept it so that it goes higher? Things like that. It's haggling. It's haggling. It's haggling. Is it possible this time of the pandemic that we suspend alphanumeric grades because the alphanumeric grades are meant to grade students who are answering the assessments by themselves? What if we focus on the achievement of the required criteria? For example, if the learning outcome for kinder is for them to count 1 to 100, 1 until 100, if they can do that, can we just tell them that's pass? Or maybe if they're done better, that's pass with the distinction, right? What if we also want insufficient evidence? We tell them, you need to provide us evidence of your learning. We're not going to fail you at this time of the pandemic. We're not going to fail you yet, but we're going to give you the responsibility to provide us evidence of your learning. Now, whether you cheat, whether you're the one creating the evidence of learning, it's not us whom you are cheating. By the way, you're just cheating yourselves, right? Another thing, we're not going to give a passing grade to everyone. What we're telling here is, do we still have standards? We're making it clear. You will have to achieve it. Because if you don't achieve it, then that's the time that we are going to fail you. We're just practicing a little bit of flexibility and accountability because there are some students that we have right now who might be living in communities affected by the quarantine, right? If they are affected by the quarantine, they have pandemic anxiety, they cannot focus well, or maybe their parents are essential workers who are always in danger. Are there any way of where we can be flexible in assessment and even in submission of requirements? Right? Is there any other way of doing this? Will you fail a student just because they did not submit their projects because they are undergoing a certain problem right now? The pandemic, education is in the pandemic is asking us to practice flexibility. Some of you are saying we practice flexible learning. I want to push that further. If you practice flexible learning, how flexible are you even in assessment or submission of requirements? Or are you just expecting the same thing? Old normal, new normal, pandemic, wala, it doesn't make a difference. We're just doing online distance education. We're still very strict, right? What are we going to do? What if students cannot submit their requirements because they are undergoing pandemic anxiety? I just want to tell you right now, for example, I'm living in a building where we have COVID positive cases. I've been doing work from home since March. And there are times when my productivity in my school, I'm also an administrator, I'm also a teacher in my school, and I'm very conscious that my productivity is being affected because I'm scared because outside my room in our building there are positive cases, right? It's even getting inside my head. Sometimes it's hard to sleep at night. Can you imagine the students? They're very young to experience this, especially the young ones. You know, um, things like that. Okay, there's a good question here from Ernesto Spadilla. How would you simplify the grading system? Just a caution, these are the recommendations. We still need to wait for the Department of Education, especially in the public school sector and other private schools. You might need to wait for guidance from the public school system, from the Department of Education. But I've done some interviews for schools overseas. Even Harvard University suspended their regular grading system because it's really hard for the students to cope up with the demands of the school. So they still have assessments, but they tried to change the way they do grading system so that they don't focus on honors or grades, high grades. They focus now on achievement of standards. Case in point, what does 9 over 10 tell you? There's a quiz. Math quiz, for example, there's one mistake. You give the grade to the students 9 over 10. Maybe that's 90. What does 90 mean to student? What does 90 mean to the student? Will the 90 grade give the student a feedback? Will it tell the students what kind of learning they have? Those are just numbers. It doesn't make a difference. There are a lot of literature, education researches, literature that tell us that they tell us that in order to help students learn better, in order for students to learn better, we need to make sure that they are given feedback. So that's why it's important that we look at standards, at rubrics. Of course, these are just recommendations. We need to follow at some point what the Department of Education would say, but experience from schools in the United States, overseas, they have suspended alphanumeric, instead focus on passing or failing. It's just as simple as that. Okay? So you can wait for that, you can wait for the guidelines. But as you wait for the guidelines, I'm just gonna remind you again, honor system. Is the honor system causing much positive effect on students or negative? In distance education, we follow the traditional grading system. There's still 100 and there are still honor students. Can you imagine that all of your students are first honors? Can you imagine if your students are all first honors? Your educators, statistics would say that that's not a normal scenario. Right? Can you comment to me? Can you comment what you think? If we follow honor system, if we follow the traditional grading system, what if all of your students become honor students at the end? It's not because we don't want that to happen, but does that give you a reliable data? Right? Will that give you a reliable data? It's not that we don't want our students to achieve or to become honor students, but if 100% all your students are first honors, what does that tell you? So keep Write your comments there. Write your comments. Okay. Final thoughts. In distance education, your assessment, if it's not cheat proof, we try to make it cheat proof, but then in the end, students answer it at their homes. It's okay. What we want to happen right now, that's what I told you. That's what I told you a while ago. Assessment that talk about answering tests, grading system, honor system goes beyond assessment. It's about honesty and integrity. It's about developing these values. It's about creating a character, living a character of truthfulness, right? We tell our students, we tell our parents, practice honesty and integrity. Model it to your kids, right? But what is pushing our students to cheat? Maybe they did not study. Maybe they want to become perfect students. There are very, very different reasons. But we know that there are reasons that are forcing them. Parents will intervene because of honors, because they want to get high grades, they want to please their parents. Is it because of our society? Our society always, we always celebrate the perfect students, right? We always award them. They worked hard for it. But do you even recognize that, failing is very important? Is your classroom a safe place to commit mistake? Or is your classroom a room for perfection? If you think that your classroom is a room for perfection, your students are afraid to commit mistake, ask yourself, are you a perfect teacher? Are you a perfect teacher? Because if you are not a perfect teacher, don't require perfection. Tell the students that even if they commit mistake, they can learn from it. Tell the students that they don't need to be a perfect person, because no one's perfect, but they can be the best version of themselves. And to be the best version of yourself, we need to remind them that it's okay to commit mistakes. Because in committing mistakes, that's how we learn. Hello, that's life. That's life. We learn from mistake in life, right? We learn from our mistakes in life. So it's very important. It's called growth mindset. We need to teach our students. We need to tell our parents, because parents are the one pressuring students to become perfect students. Therefore, that's one motivation for them. And then some parents would even intervene because they want the kids to be perfect. No. You need to teach them that they need to accept that they're not perfect people, but they can be the best version of themselves. How? By recognizing that when they fail, di ba in life, there's a study that followed valedictorians and those who were failing in class. You know what happened in the study? You can search it. It's online. You know what happened? The valedictorians were so afraid to commit mistake in real life. They did not get promoted much. They were afraid to step out of the box. It was hard for them to innovate. It was hard for them to create new things because they were afraid to commit mistake. What about those students who were failing? Because they were so used to failing, they are not afraid to fail. They were not afraid to experiment. They had better promotions because their companies trust them. When they experiment, it's okay because they learn from their mistakes, right? Um, it's very, very important. It's very, very important that we need to understand also, grades do not define the students. Grades will tell us, it's not grades that will tell us. Feedback, data from the work of the students will give us, not the grades, an insight to the students. Okay? Grades are just numbers. We need them. We need them. We need them to give us feedback and insight, but it's not the end of everything. All right? So, again, what if students cheat or get so much help from other people? May I ask you that you talk to your parents during orientation? So some people are saying, what if parents do not know what to do in distance learning? Orient them, teach them. If parents can go to the barangay hall to get their ayuda, what is stopping you from asking them to the barangay hall so that you can have a meeting with them? Right? Kung kaya nga nilang pumunta sa barangay hall para kumuha ng ayuda, what will stop them from going to the barangay hall for you to hold a meeting to introduce them to distance learning? Right. So that's the one thing that you can do. Orient the students, orient the parents, and tell them that assessments in remote learning, the ball is in their court. They can basically do whatever they want to do. But if they cheat or if they let other people do the assessment, it's not the teacher's loss. It's not the teacher's loss. It's their loss. Okay? They need to realize that they're the one losing the opportunity to learn from their mistakes at this time of the pandemic, right? So very, very important. We need to tell the parents that is the assessment right now. What about those students who have been getting honors and working hard? Um, recognize them. Recognize them. That should not stop you from recognizing them. But that will be your test. If there are no more honors, will they still work hard? That's a very interesting point. That's a very interesting point. Why don't you ask why if there are no honor system, do you think your honor students who are motivated to get higher grades, to get honors, do you think they will still study better and learn better and study harder even if there are no honors? Right? If there are no honors, that's a very interesting point. That's a very interesting point. Okay, I'm really excited to know your thoughts. Do you think your students who are honor students, if we remove the honor system, do you think they will study hard? If they don't study hard, then maybe the motivation of grades is not helping them, right? What if in real life there are no grades? Reward system. That's for the younger people. For the younger kids. In the end, you need to realize that you're studying hard, not for external motivation, but for internal motivation. Grades are external motivation. We ask the students, what do you get from grades? Is it satisfaction? Right? Not all happy people are academically, the top ones in the school. So let's ask ourselves, maybe there's a very important thing that we need to understand about motivation also, right? Another thing, last, I think this is the last. Are we assessing students' work or students' homes? Equitable access. Just because they have online class doesn't mean that they should have higher grades. Mas maganda, their project is better because they created it with video or they created it with technology tools. Oh, your project is not good because it's just printed. It's just handwritten. Maybe we need to remove that mindset. I know that there are teachers who still have that kind of mindset. There are teachers na nakukuha sa design. There are teachers na, face value, pabonggahan, face value. But if you read through it, wala namang content. It doesn't make a difference. The content is just the same with other people. Right now, in terms of assessment, go beyond the aesthetics. You're not supposed to just be stuck with the aesthetics of the project. You're supposed to look at the content. That's equitable assessment. Look at the content, not at the aesthetics. Right? So that's very, very important. That's very, very important. Okay? We need to rethink assessments and grades. That's very, very important right now. We need to contextualize the discussion and decision making also. So when we rethink assessment and grades, we need to contextualize it. Maybe we can just say, sige, for this year, this COVID year, maybe we can suspend the traditional grading system. We can suspend honor system. But let's not lose our sight. What's going to happen after the pandemic? What's going to happen after the pandemic, right? So we don't lose our sight of what is very, very essential and non-negotiable, right? For example, what if grades are still the motivation of the students and they're already much, um, do they have a capacity to go beyond grades as motivation? Is there a fulfillment in there? I think we need to understand that. If I think the danger is, what if the students equate acceptance? What if students equate acceptance and praise with grades? It's still the same thing. They will be very, very afraid to commit mistakes because we're too much focused on grades. If the students fail, that should not stop us from praising them. Let's praise the effort. Let's encourage them, right? The traditional system kasi of the society gives so much prize to those who are on top. What about those who need to be improved? Right? Tinutulungan ba natin sila? Or are there teachers there? I know that there are teachers there. Let's be honest, bato-bato sa langit, tamaan huwag magalit. There are teachers there who focus to the top students because they are coaches so that they can get certificates, so that they can improve, promotion and everything. That's okay, that's good. But don't forget the students who are struggling in your class. You owe it to them. You owe it to them. Okay? Don't just focus yourselves on the honor students in your class just because they're giving you certificates, which you can use in your promotion. You owe it to them. You owe to your students who are struggling to give feedback, to make sure that they are learning also. That's real talk right now. That's real talk right now. We need to go beyond that. Okay? So that ends our discussion, and I'm just gonna plug in. Before we go to the open forum, I will just gonna scroll down the question. I think there are a lot of insights. Let's read them later. I'm just so happy right now to look at your insight. Does it show? I'm so excited because I've read a lot of your comments. Oh, by the way, can those people, I'm saying it in a friendly manner, don't ask for the evaluation yet, don't ask for the certificates yet. We're not yet done. We're not yet done. Wag mo tayong magmamadali. Hold your horses, everyone. Okay? I'm just gonna do plug in. Our next session is on July 18, 2020. That's on Saturday. It's the same time. If you've noticed, I'm putting there GMT +8 because we have audience from other time zone. So in Manila we are +8. So what we're gonna talk about next meeting is to elevate distance education. How? Let's look at strategies and activities that will promote deeper and creative thinking in students. Your modules. I hope that your modules are not just read, answer. Let's bring in strategies and activities so that you can still engage them even if you're not there. Okay? So this is just a plug-in. Now, the evaluation is here. The evaluation ends after a week. Please make sure that you input the correct spelling. No, that correcting. You input the correct, I'm gonna change that, correct spelling of your name and email address. This is the link to it. Please ignore that correcting spelling. I'm just gonna change that later. But this is the evaluation. You will receive your certificate a week after this, within this week. Okay, so within this week. So if you have not received your certificate after a week, that's the time that you message Empower Ed. But if you have not received it and the week is not yet done, that means that we're still giving certificates. Just to give you, we have a lot of audience. We have a lot of audience. Last session, we have 3,000 audience. And the system has to keep up, has to cope with the demand. So don't worry about it, okay? Now, I'm gonna flash the evaluation later. Okay. I'm just gonna stop sharing. You can look at the evaluation later. I'm just gonna read some comments. All right. So I'm just gonna fix myself on the screen. What are your comments here? Intervention. Yes, intervention is very, very good. Feedback. You actually intervene because you have gathered good feedback. Intervention means not parent intervention. Intervention means that you're going to help your students who are struggling so that they can further become, they'll be integrated to the regular class. That's what we call as intervention. Okay? So I think I have some viewers a while ago at the Rex. By the way, the EdTech team in Rex, I'm the leader for the EdTech team in Rex. I just want to thank you for supporting us there. So thank you for those who have been watching. I just want to read this comment from Leia Sabasa. The grading system based on activities is reasonable as referred to the correct ones. Grading a student based on honesty may be in a separate rating verified through Q&A rubrics, which doesn't agree with the score. It doesn't really, for me, you can still grade students, but it's hard to grade honesty. How can you grade honesty, right? How can you grade honesty? You just expect honesty from students. You expect honesty. There are things that you cannot grade. honesty, integrity, respect. You cannot grade them. You cannot grade them. People can be very respectful in front of you, but when they are behind you, they're not respectful of you. You cannot grade those virtues or values, but it's okay. You can still grade them. But let's go beyond the grading system. Okay. Sheila says learning is the end goal, not the grades. Very good. That's a very, very good insight. Okay. At this time of the pandemic, grades doesn't, for me, maybe grades are not even the most important thing. The most important thing at this time of the pandemic is that students continue learning, that they don't stop learning. Can you imagine if students stop learning? Can you imagine if they lose enthusiasm in learning? I cannot imagine that. Okay. So again, maybe at this time of the pandemic, our only goal is that they continue learning, that they don't stop learning. All right. Um, I'm gonna scroll down. Questions um, or insights. Content is more important. Um, okay, content is okay. Dan and Adelia, I need to correct your understanding. A while ago in Rex, the discussion was for teacher creating learning resources, right? I did not say content is more important there. Context is more important. However, for assessments that are being submitted by the students, the project, you need to check the content of the assessment. Okay, I hope Dan you are able to understand that. In the Rex for those who are watching right now, a while ago in Rex I had a session where we talk about teacher creating learning resources. What I said a while ago is content will only matter if you're creating a learning resource as a designer, as a teacher, if you know the context of your students. Like for example, you cannot give a content printed on pictures tapos yung student mo colorblind. Hindi nila makikita yun na maayos. That's what I mean by context. It's the teacher creating learning resource. However, what I said about checking content, it's for the assessment, for the projects. For example, essay. You need to read the content of the assessment being submitted by your student. I think then there might be something lost in translation here, but I hope that it's clarified. Okay, when you're checking assessment, content is very, very important. When I say design, it's the aesthetics of a project. In Rex, we're talking about learning resources that teachers create. Here in assessment, we're talking about projects that students submit, where we say we go beyond design and aesthetics. You look at the content of the projects. I hope that clarifies it then. Thank you so much for bringing that out so that we can clarify there. Shirley Deason says, no, I'm not a perfect teacher. Like everyone else, no one's a perfect teacher, but we can help the students improve their skills by giving feedback, which is very, very good. We need to give feedback. We need to teach our students. I'm pretty sure some of you teachers, you feel bad when people give you feedback. It's because we were not trained to accept feedback openly. We're not also trained to give feedback properly. So it's important that we look at feedback giving and feedback acceptance. That's actually a skill. Um, one idea, Ruel Perante says there should always be guidelines in determining honor students. But the question here is distance education. If the honor system is based on grades and the grades of the students in distance education is coming from unreliable data, what will be your guidelines? I'm very interested to know what will be your guidelines there. What will be your guidelines? Even if you have guidelines in honor system in distance education, I'm very interested. What will be the guidelines if the grades that are coming from the students are not that very reliable, right? Okay, balance, flexibility, and accountability. Yes, very good. That's a very good insight. I'm just scrolling down. Um, thank you so much for saying that this is a very good lecture. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. One thing that I really appreciate it also, maybe you can share this lecture the YouTube lecture also to some of your friends. And maybe you can subscribe to my channel so that you can get feedback, notification. Share it to your colleagues. Don't be afraid to share it to your colleagues. And I really, really appreciate it. Okay. Let's look at other. Angelo Maliari says the values of failure and mistakes are necessary values to grow and progress in life. Yes, I personally have, a lot of the things that I'm saying right now, I've learned them, but I did not learn them perfectly. I learned them from my mistakes. I have to learn. As a teacher, you need to learn from your mistake, right? Um, Mary Grace Escares is also pointing out one important thing that we need to understand: digital divide. It's very hard right now, because the pandemic has showed us the haves and the have-nots. It's very sad that we have been experiencing digital divide, and I hope we take risks. I hope the government maybe, or the local government units, or maybe the national government could really help at this time around, when the digital divide is affecting the way we are teaching right now. um, yes, some of you are agreeing that grades are just numbers. They don't define the whole of the student, which I agree also. Oh, this is very, very good. Dan again brings out repetition of mistakes. There are different kinds of mistakes. There are mistakes that, simple mistakes. Ay, natapon ko. That's a simple mistake. However, there are mistakes in life where we need to learn from our mistakes, right? A repetition of mistakes, especially if they are, how do you call that? High stake mistakes. You cannot just say, oops, I can just do it better next time. There are what we call as high stake mistakes that we prepare for. While we say that there is growth mindset, we learn from our mistake. A repetition of mistakes also means that maybe we're not learning from our mistakes. So we need to stop, pause, reflect. What should I learn from this mistake? That's actually a skill. And who teaches the student the skill? Teachers in education. So if you don't let your students commit mistakes, I don't know when will are they going to learn from their mistakes, right? Okay, very good. I've had a lot of comments there. Thank you for the wonderful comments. I really, really appreciate your comments. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that's very, very it's we had a very good interaction. I hope that I could invite you next time, maybe to a Zoom meeting or to a Zoom webinar. What I'm doing right now is just live streaming in YouTube, so that we can accommodate all our viewers. Our viewers in Empower Ed, they don't necessarily go online together. There are a lot of people who watch the videos on their own time, but that's okay. So thank you so much for everyone. Thank you so much for everyone. So I hope that you were able to capture the evaluation. I'm gonna post the evaluation link in our chat right now. I'm gonna show it also to you. So for one last time, I'm gonna show it. I'm gonna show the evaluation link so that you could take a picture of it. I'm just zooming in. Again, pardon this. That should not be there. Um, I need to correct that. Let's just correct that quickly. Correct. Okay. So you're seeing me editing the mistake that I have. There. Okay. I hope that I hope that fixes everything. It's very embarrassing right now. But again, the evaluation ends after a week. Please make sure that you input the correct spelling of your name and email address. The link to evaluation is this one. All right. So thank you, everyone. I'm just gonna leave this. I'm just gonna leave this for a few minutes before I end our live lecture. Thank you so much. I hope that you are still safe and healthy at this time of the pandemic. I'll see you next session. Oh, by the way, tomorrow I'm going live on Facebook. There's a live discussion. So I have YouTube. My YouTube shows are actually Saturdays, but on Sundays I have live Facebook discussion on Empower Ed on Facebook, and I usually interview the best educators, the leading experts in education internationally and locally. So please stay tuned. Stay tuned. Tomorrow the topic for our live discussion on Facebook is I will survive and thrive, how to become an effective distance educator. And I have invited experts from the United States, from Japan, from the Philippines also, who could share their experience in becoming distance education teachers. So I'll see you on Facebook hopefully tomorrow. All right. So thank you, everyone. Please take a screenshot, and then I'll gonna end. I'll gonna stop sharing for in a few minutes now, in a few seconds. So thank you so much. Stay safe. Goodbye. See you on Empower Ed next time.